If you don't know how to review things, then I stress you go watch the Angry Asian review template to know how my scoring system works. Okay, confession. I wanted to hate this game. It's an EA game, a company that concocts mediocre, half-baked game ideas. It'll sell the beta of that game at full price, and once they finish nickel and diming you, they release the full mediocre game as the sequel and pretend they learned a lesson. Not to mention, this is the devil, like the devil of Christian theology. They make bargains for your soul, knowing that you will fail, and one of its victims was Visceral Studio, the creators of the original Dead Space series. So when the Dead Space remake came out, I was ready to hate it. Nay, I wanted to hate it, to declare that it was a cheap ripoff, a pale imitation of the original, as per EA's long history. Also, EA's to blame for Dead Space 3. But, having played the remake, I can't. If I had to be honest, I came away from the remake very impressed with what I saw. Hey, I guess a broken clock is right twice a day. It's the future. A rather bleak future, but it's the future. Earth's resources are in the shitter, and humanity has turned to other planets to get their stuff from. Literally opening a planet like Kratos opening a treasure chest, then taking all the valuables within. A process known as planet cracking. When a planet cracker starship Ishimura is Japanese, it sends out a distress signal, you are dispatched to render aid. Problem is, you're not a soldier. You're just a simple engineer there to help fix their problems. And frankly, you're only here to see your girlfriend. So when you find that the ship is infested with space zombies, yeah, there's a big problem. And what starts out as a routine repair mission soon turns into the fight for survival and figure out the mystery of the Dead Space zombies. If you're familiar with sci-fi horror, you're familiar with this formula. But while it lacks in originality, it makes up for with presentation. Whether it be John Carpenter's The Thing or the original Alien movie, humans have a fear of space. The endless void, empty and unseen. We fear what is out there. Instead, space taps into these fears. It asks the question of what terrifying monster is out in space. Even the design of the space zombies, known as necromorphs, aren't just your run-of-the-mill zombies. They are twisted, grotesque monsters reminiscent of classics that I mentioned. And the mystery of their origin is at the forefront, giving just enough answers to keep you going forwards while leaving unanswered questions. You'll find yourself repairing the ship, making sure it doesn't vent you out into space, all the while investigating the ship's last moments and how it stumbled across the first signs of alien life. If you're a Dead Space vet, you might be wondering what changes they made, and have to say, just enough to feel fresh, but not too much to change it entirely. For one, Isaac can now talk and interacts with the rest of the crew, rather than be the team's errand boy. When the first Dead Space came out, they probably didn't know where they wanted to take the series, or if they even wanted it to be a series. As a result, it often felt like the first game was disconnected from the rest. In the remake, they made sure to connect the dots, referencing future games and plots and characters with emails and audio logs. Some big changes are the dynamics of the crew. In the original, the characters were openly aggressive and hostile right off the bat. In this one, they are more subdued. The performance is flatter, but in exchange they actually work as a team for a significant chunk of the game. Characters are far more expanded. Nicole gets an entire side quest line, as does Mercer. Hammond now has ties to the red shirts who die. Even Kendra's more empathetic than her original counterpart. Isaac talks now. I do mean it when I say you work as a team, bouncing ideas off each other and discussing your next course of action rather than being the OG errand boy. Something really cool that they did in regards to New Game Plus is it has new dialogue and even a new ending for you to experience. What you see in the gameplay trailers is what you get. This is an over-the-shoulder, third-person shooter. As horror games are, Isaac is rather slow in his movement. The only way to shoot your weapon is to aim it first, and if you aim, you will move even slower. Instead of reticles, you aim via laser sight, leaving you to carefully aim each shot. You kill zombies with headshots? You're funny. These necromorphs don't die from headshots. You have to completely tear them apart. Tear off arms, tear off legs. Sure, aim at the body if you insist, Just don't be surprised if your ammo count starts dropping faster than the Ishimuro's crew count. A cool new addition is the ability to rip off the flesh of enemies. Sure, it's been done before in other games, but not to this degree. Your goal is to dismember enemies, so you have to strip the flesh from bone, then break the bone. And you get to see the entire process, so it's really cool to watch a beefy limb get ripped to shreds before finally falling off. It's also a good indicator of what to shoot. The arm looks like it's about to fall off? Well, it probably is, and you should shoot there. One big change is that the game is now an open world of sorts. You can roam wherever you want on the ship. Once that section is unlocked, you can go back there at any time, and there's an AI director that tracks what you do and how to put enemies in your path so that you never get bored. Though this is a double-edged sword in a way. In the original game, as you progress, the ship becomes overrun with growth, and sections of the ship become inaccessible because it gets blocked off. Obviously, you can't do that now. As per open worlds, there's even side missions, and these aren't just boring or tedious side quests. You'll have to investigate the last moments of several crewmates. You'll find doors that require certain security clearance to unlock. Or you'll find fuse boxes where you have to pick and choose where to divert power. These changes are small, but polished enough that they'll give you plenty of entertainment. Especially vets, since these were not in the original game. If you ever get lost, hold down a button to pulse your tracking, a line on the floor telling you where to go. But unfortunately, in this one, it is only a ping and it is only for your objectives. You can't hold it now, and it no longer shows where stores and benches are. Sure, that was not in the original, but it was a severe improvement in the sequels. Many of the weapons have also seen overhauls. While they largely remain the same, they have been seriously rebalanced and for the better. Whereas before some of them were clearly superior to others, now I can see every weapon being able to take me through the game. This also goes well with the new ripping system, as some weapons aren't good for actually killing enemies, but they'll rip flesh from bone with a few shots, making it easy for weaker weapons to finish them off. Even tools like Kinesis and Stasis have seen some tweaks to them, making them much more effective in combat. Before I would forget I even had Stasis. In the remake, that thing has saved my hide. Zero G makes a return, but you start with your jetpack instead of jumping everywhere like in the original. Something to note is the game's UI, or its rather lack of one. Everything you need to know is displayed holographically somewhere. Aim your gun to see a holo display of your ammo count. Your health is on your spine. Your stasis is that CD on your shoulder. Items will have holographic pop-ups when you approach them. There is no UI whatsoever. Even the chapters displayed are holographically projected from the suit. As the Dead Space games went on, enemies grew faster and more numerous, and most of all, more fragile. By Dead Space 3, instead of Dead Space, you are playing Left to Die in Space. The remake has rolled back on these and in a big way. Enemies are back to being fairly slow, but I don't think I've ever seen them this tanky. And of course, there's always Pang. She's not where she was in the original game, but there's always Pang. I guess I should take a moment to speak on the open world bit. The game has a library of scares ranging from things simply malfunctioning on the ship to enemy spawns, and as you go back there's a chance you'll encounter one of these. And it doesn't just toss enemies at you like a zombie shooter, at least not all the time. I remember one instance I was playing off camera. I went inside the bathroom to make sure I didn't miss anything there. On my way out, the game spawned a necromorph playing dead right at the entrance. It gave me a jump scare since I literally just came from that direction and didn't expect it. I've seen others like vent shafts malfunctioning to outright shatter, things trying to burst through the floor, and even voices and hallucinations. When enemies spawn, they don't just dogpile in one direction like a corridor shooter. A very common tactic is for enemies to spawn in front of you, then the game will put a clever girl spawning behind you. Stay on your toes and you can get them both down. Be overtaken by panic or overconfidence and the second will give you quite the surprise. While I do think there were one or two things that missed the mark, I can't really speak on them here. I'll do a separate spoiler video, but this game did more right than wrong. I struggle to find the words for this game. Simply put, if you miss old school survival horror, or wonder what old school survival horror was all about, if you grew up in the era of Doom 3, Fear, and, of course, the original Dead Space, this game is your old nostalgia giving new life. Who knows, maybe they'll start making more games like this again. If you love the old Dead Space game, then you'll love this game. It strikes the perfect balance of keeping old things and introducing new things. Dead Space veterans will be given enough new content that this game feels fresh while keeping enough that they get to experience what they love. And of course, newcomers get to experience a more polished package. Overall, I give this game a 7 out of 10 with a solid thumbs up, an 8 out of 10 for Dead Space fans. You'll like this game if you like the OG Dead Space, or if you like old school horror games. Note that it is a third-person shooter in mechanics but has slowed things down to be more methodical and tense. Don't expect run-and-gun action. Even the Mook necromorphs are few in numbers but will tank your shots. The story gets a green. The original Dead Space took inspiration from horror films like Alien and The Thing, even Event Horizon. So if you like these stories, then you know what to expect from that story. Gameplay also gets a green, as is the same third-person style many horror games used to be, especially Resident Evil. While the game does take a few missteps, they are few and far between. I'll make a spoiler discussion video later. I went into this game wanting to hate it, and now I leave recommending it, especially to the Dead Space fans.